Hey, what's up out there, guys? Anthony here with the Silver Screen Analysis. I just want to start by thanking you all for swinging by the channel to check out a video. It's greatly appreciated. You guys are all fantastic. Now, we have Hobbs Shaw coming out to theaters this weekend. It's finally here. This Fast and Furious spinoff centers on Dwayne Johnson and Jason Statham's characters from those movies, and it gives them their own little world-saving mission to go on. David Leitch is the director. Vanessa Kirby comes in to play Shaw's little sister. And we have Idris Elba taking on the mantle of villain, but he's not just any villain, he's genetically enhanced and in pursuit of this world-ending virus with only Hobbs and the Shaw siblings standing in his way. No, I have enjoyed the Fast and Furious films despite the increased levels of absurdity and the soap opera-like layers that have been added to them in recent entries. Fast 8 was a film that was filled with a lot of fun action sequences, but it was just a mind-numbing storyline, so with Hobbs and Shaw just being the two bright spots in that film, I was just naturally interested to see what they could do in their own movie. I was also very curious to see what a Fast and Furious action comedy would look like, and with the odd couple tropes on display in this film, it certainly showed it to me, and I had a good time with this film. I laughed when they wanted me to, I laughed when they weren't trying to make me do so, and while it is not Oscar-worthy material by any means, I still think it was a wildly entertaining ride. I think there are simply some things that one needs to expect when going into a film from this franchise and what it's shown us over the years. I think the suspension of disbelief needs to be that of like you're going into a film with flying superheroes or singing lions. I think despite looking like a real-world setting with normal human characters, these are all far from that. The laws of physics, gravity, and just human nature overall are going to be skewed to the most extreme level just for the sake of creating some cool-looking sequences, and there are some cool-looking sequences here. One can also expect a very nonsensical storyline with a lot of contrived plot twists and overinflated personalities, and this one has all those as well. This movie does not break that mold, it simply adds a lot of comedy to it for better or worse, which for me actually did work, because despite this movie feeling like Hobbs and Shaw and being Hobbs and Shaw, it still very much felt like a Fast and Furious film in terms of just overall spectacle, campiness, masculine bravado, and just pure ridiculousness. And I would say a major positive with this film is without question the chemistry between Johnson and Statham. They both clearly commit to these characters and the comedic shtick, which really just results in some solid laughs between them throughout the film. The dialogue was pretty nicely crafted with a overly charismatic self-awareness. It complements the personalities of the characters, which enables both Johnson and Statham to land some laughs throughout the story as they work together while technically not wanting to work together. And for me, another major positive would be the action sequences. I thought they were intricately constructed, they were massive in scope at times, and just loaded with all that inflated spectacle to create just endless supplies of over-the-top visuals throughout this movie. The strong suit certainly is in the chase sequences. I think any Fast and Furious connected movie is going to have some great chases that show a lot of choreography, and this one certainly does. This is where director David Leitch really comes in to just frame up the set pieces with a great visual eye. The angles are routinely appealing. The scenes just pull the viewer into the chaotic scenarios, and it's completely engaging from a purely entertainment aspect. This movie is highly eccentric. It takes things overboard at every possible chance, which is, to me, exactly what this movie sold itself as throughout all the trailers and the promo material. Because this one does not at all try to be like a Mission Impossible style action film. It's one that will change the weather on a dime if it will lead to a cool looking shot. It's one that conveniently supplies its characters with arsenals of whatever they need. It isn't a movie that relies on intelligent story arcs. It's just a pure spirited action comedy with crazy action scenes and endless amounts of self-awareness. I mean, Johnson and Statham are dishing out beatings and one-liners much like an 80s action movie, and I think seeing that type of film with the budget of this one and all the technological abilities of filmmaking today are what make this such an energized, engaging film to watch. I mean, even when it's crossing extremely into the realm of just the sappy melodrama, and it does routinely, it still kind of works because of the unintentional amusement of it all and just seeing how they could say some of this stuff with a straight face. I also thought another bright spot was Vanessa Kirby. I really loved what she brought to this film. I felt her pairing with Johnson and Statham came off surprisingly naturally. I think she was able to not only hold her own in the action department, but she more importantly did so as well in terms of personality, which I thought led to some humorous moments between the three of them throughout this movie. I also thought Idris Elba was a solid villain, and with his commanding performance and just his screen presence, he gave the character all the inflated gravitas that was needed to make him both an imposing presence for our heroes, but admittedly kind of a likable villain as well. Plus, he was more than capable in the action sequences with the fight choreography to really hold his own with everybody to really create some cool set pieces. I think if you're familiar with this franchise, that a majority of the drawbacks to this film are to be expected. The story, like I said, was not incredibly interesting or inspiring. It didn't really capture my imagination. It was just a vehicle to create a lot of situational humor, grandiose action, and to set up constant banter between the two leads, and for that aspect, it works for all that. I think the conveniences to get this story where it needs to go are endless. Picking this thing apart is not going to do you any favors because 2 + 2 rarely equals 4 in this one. I also think that while certain sections of the backstory of Hobbs and Shaw's character were nice for some comedic effect, I think the more serious dynamics were not really needed. They kind of hindered the pace. I mean, a little backstory here and there is enjoyable, but given these established characters' recycled foundation, to me just took away from the momentum of the film at times. Which leads me to my biggest drawback to this film, and that simply being just the length of it. I think it's entirely too long, much like the Fast and Furious movies are. I think this one being a blend of both comedy and action, to me, makes it even more imperative that everything just keeps moving and that it doesn't stick around too long, but it does honestly get fatiguing. I think trimming 30 to 40 minutes off of this runtime would have cleaned up some of the more clunky and forced dialogue. I think it would have really trimmed out sections of the scattered story and would have just kept the comedic energy up overall, because despite having a good time with this movie, there were sections where it did feel a little bit stale in terms of the banter and when it would just take itself too seriously in terms of when it was telling its story. And overall, I think this movie accomplished what it set out to do. I think Hobbs and Shaw gave me exactly what I was expecting, and I gotta give it 70% on the entertainment meter. This movie knew exactly what it was. Some of it works, some of it definitely does not, but it certainly is filled with a lot of fun, stylized action and two vibrant lead performances to really make it worth a watch for fans of the franchise. To me, it just needed to be a little bit shorter so that those best moments of banter between Johnson and Statham wouldn't have been slightly muffled by some of the moments that should have been left on the cutting room floor, and I think this movie does have many of those. Now for today's My Silver Screen recommendations, I'm going to be selecting, of course, Tango and Cash starring Stallone and Russell, as well as Two Guns starring Denzel Washington and Mark Wahlberg, and Double Impact starring Jean-Claude Van Damme and Jean-Claude Van Damme, for 3 action movies that all have a little bit of comedy and 2 big leads. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, drop it a thumbs up, leave a comment below. I'd love to talk movies with you guys. Share it with your friends, and without question, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you can never miss a video. Here are some links to some recent reviews just in case you missed them. All my social media links and the link to our official website are down in the description below, and I'll catch you next time.